Thanks for tuning in to Crazy Manga Stories. Give a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell for more betrayal stories. The air was still in Ryan's study, the faint hum of the ceiling fan barely breaking the silence. His sanctuary was a haven of order, books arranged by height, papers filed meticulously, every detail a testament to his measured life. Tonight, though, his sanctuary felt suffocating. On his desk lay the damning evidence, a collection of photos, text message screenshots, and bank statements meticulously compiled. Proof of Lisa's betrayal. Ryan sat back, his gray eyes fixed on a single photo. There she was, Lisa, his wife of 15 years, smiling in a way he hadn't seen in years. Not with him, but with James, their well-off neighbor. His jaw clenched as he traced her expression, the light in her eyes that had long since dimmed in their marriage. His hands trembled as he replayed the scene from the afternoon before. Lisa had come home later than usual, her laugh too forced, her explanations too vague. It was Emma, his best friend, who had first voiced the suspicion he refused to entertain. Now the evidence sat before him, undeniable and cruel. Lisa had been careful. The receipts from hidden dinners were vague, the texts deleted, but her carelessness betrayed her when James's name appeared in her contact list under a generic pseudonym, Work Event. A detail too small for most to notice, but Ryan was not most men. His sharp mind, honed by years of meticulous problem-solving in his corporate career, had unraveled the threads of her deception. He closed his eyes, the weight of her betrayal pressing against his chest. Memories of their life together flooded his mind. The laughter they'd shared when they first bought their modest suburban home. The late-night conversations when their dreams aligned. Yet, somewhere along the way, their shared dreams had diverged. He reached for his phone, dialing Emma. "Have the proof," Ryan said, his voice steadier than he felt. Emma's voice on the other end was firm. "What's the plan?" Ryan hesitated. Confrontation was not his way. He needed time, a strategy, a way to ensure Lisa and James couldn't walk away unscathed. Ryan said, "I need more," he said. "Their messages, financials, something that ties them together beyond a mere affair." Elvis took the photograph. Emma sighed. "Are you sure you want to go down this road?" "Absolutely," Ryan replied. "They need to feel the weight of this," he said. Hanging up, Ryan turned back to his desk. He picked up Lisa's phone, which he had quietly mirrored the night before. A new message lit up the screen, confirming their weekend plans. "It's just us this time," James had written. "No distractions." With each word the letter bared, Ryan's chest tightened. But his mind remained focused. His next steps were clear. They had given him a timeline, an opportunity to prepare. He would ensure their idyllic weekend turned into their worst nightmare. As the clock struck midnight, Ryan opened his laptop. The screen illuminated his steely expression as he began mapping out his plan. He had always been a man of logic and precision. This would be no different. "By the time they realize," Ryan muttered to himself, his voice cold and resolute, "it will already be too late." The first domino was about to fall. The dawn broke over the neighborhood, spilling sunlight onto manicured lawns and the wide, quiet streets. To any observer, Ryan's house was like every other, a picture of stability, with freshly trimmed hedges and a well-kept porch. Inside, however, Ryan was constructing a storm. He sat in the corner of his study, Emma on speakerphone, her voice sharp with urgency. "I pulled what I could from his records," she said. "James has been funneling money into a private account. Looks like he's been preparing for something." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Of course, the affair isn't enough. He's using Lisa to line his pockets," Emma sighed. "It's all speculative right now, but if I dig deeper, bank statements, corporate filings, we might have a solid lead." Ryan nodded, though she couldn't see him. "Do it." And Emma, Yeah, keep this between us. I can't afford any mistakes. Hanging up, Ryan glanced at the clock. Lisa would be home soon, her usual routine of Pilates and brunch with friends keeping her away most of the morning. He had less than an hour to prepare. Moving to their bedroom, he opened her closet and rifled through her handbags until he found it. A set of keys to James's house. She must have been careless. How else could they be sitting, unhidden, in her everyday bag? His stomach twisted, but he stuffed the keys into his pocket. He would need them for tonight. Lisa arrived an hour later, her face flushed and glowing, as though her betrayal hadn't weighed on her for even a moment. Ryan studied her carefully as she moved around the kitchen, humming a tune he hadn't heard her sing in years. "You're in a good mood?" he said casually, sipping his coffee. Lisa froze for half a second before her smile returned. "Just a good day, I guess." Ryan said nothing, allowing the silence to stretch between them. He knew better than to confront her now. He'd read the psychology of guilt enough to know it could make liars defensive. Instead, he offered a small smile and returned to his laptop, feigning disinterest. All right. By the time evening fell, Lisa was distracted enough not to notice when Ryan left the house. His plan required precision, and he couldn't afford to tip his hand too soon. James's house sat at the far end of the neighborhood, its towering facade hiding the rot within. Ryan parked a block away and approached on foot, the keys in his hand. Entering was easy, the lock giving way without resistance. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar and lavender, evidence of wealth and careful curation. Yet, as Ryan moved deeper into the living room, the staged perfection only fueled his anger. He could almost hear their laughter, their whispers of stolen affection. Ryan turned on the ceiling. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. On James's desk sat a planner, its leather-bound cover pristine. Flipping through it, Ryan found entries for private retreats, all matching weekends Lisa had claimed to be visiting her sister. Next to it, an envelope stuffed with receipts bore her name. Carefully, he photographed everything and replaced it as he'd found it. He had one more task. In the corner, James's laptop sat open, its screen glowing faintly. Ryan inserted a USB drive loaded with spyware Emma had provided. Within seconds, the device began siphoning James's emails and financial data. Some subjects were to be tolerated. It was clean, efficient, exactly as Ryan had intended. He left no trace of his presence. Back home, Ryan reviewed his haul. Among the files Emma had retrieved earlier was a startling revelation. James wasn't just Lisa's lover. He was also deeply in debt. His grand lifestyle masked years of mismanagement, and the private account Emma had flagged contained deposits from Lisa. Ryan leaned back in his chair, a grim smile playing on his lips. They thought they were playing a simple game of deception, but they had underestimated his reach. It wasn't enough to destroy their romance. He would dismantle everything they had built, layer by layer, brick by brick. By the time they realized, there would be nothing left to salvage. Number 11. For now, though, he needed rest. Tomorrow would bring the next phase of his plan. As he lay in bed that night, Lisa beside him, oblivious to the war brewing in his mind, Ryan allowed himself one fleeting moment of doubt. Was this too far? Was revenge worth the toll it might take on him? Then he remembered her laughter in James's arms and the way she had treated their life together like a trivial convenience. His resolve hardened. There was no room for hesitation. This was only the beginning. The following morning, Ryan awoke early, slipping out of bed without disturbing Lisa. The house was still, the only sound coming from the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. His study became a war room as he laid out the collected evidence on his desk, spreading it like the pieces of a puzzle waiting to be solved. Each photograph, transaction receipt, and text message played a part, weaving a tapestry of betrayal. Ryan pored over James's financial data retrieved from the spyware Emma had installed. Patterns emerged. frequent withdrawals and deposits into an account under a fake name, multiple luxury expenses tied to a shell company, and staggeringly high debts. It wasn't just the affair. James was teetering on the edge of financial ruin, and Lisa was unknowingly funding his precarious lifestyle. Ryan's lips thinned as he realized James had likely coaxed her into believing they were building a future together. 7. Not on my watch, Ryan muttered to himself, his voice steely. He sent Emma a secure message, requesting her assistance in creating an untraceable data leak. While he didn't want his fingerprints on the destruction, he intended to expose James for the fraud he was. Then, the dominoes would fall. That afternoon, Ryan visited a trusted ally. Harold, a private investigator with decades of experience and a favor owed to Ryan, welcomed him into his modest downtown office. The room smelled faintly of coffee and old paper, its walls lined with file cabinets. "I need to set a trap," Ryan said after laying out the details of Lisa and James's affair. Harold studied him carefully. "This isn't just about catching them, is it?" "You're looking to burn the bridge." Ryan's expression hardened. "They didn't leave me much choice." The plan they devised was simple but devastating. Ryan would create a situation that forced Lisa and James to reveal their true intentions, not just to him, but to everyone in their social and professional circles. Harold promised to gather additional surveillance footage, including from the private weekend Lisa and James had planned. "We'll need definitive proof," Harold warned. "No ambiguities. If you want the fallout to stick, they can't talk their way out of it." Ryan nodded, determination etched into every line of his face. "I'll give you everything you need." Back home, Lisa moved through the house with her usual ease, unaware of the storm gathering around her. She was on the phone in the living room, speaking animatedly, her voice drifting into the study. "It's just one weekend, James. Ryan never questions these things." The casual dismissal of him as a non-entity in her life stung, but it also steeled his resolve. He felt a pang of pity for the woman she used to be, the Lisa who had once been his partner in every sense of the word. That Lisa no longer existed. The day of Lisa's planned weekend arrived. She packed a small suitcase, humming a tune that grated against Ryan's nerves. When she came into the kitchen to kiss him goodbye, Ryan forced himself to meet her eyes with a smile. "Drive safe," he said, his voice calm. Lisa hesitated for a fraction of a second before smiling back. "Of course. I'll call you when I get there." Ryan watched her leave, the door closing behind her like the ceiling of a tomb. He knew exactly where she was going. James's lakeside vacation home, the sanctuary they had stolen from his trust. Harold's team was already in place, cameras ready to capture every detail. As Lisa and James reveled in their illicit weekend, Ryan put the next phase of his plan into motion. Emma had prepared an anonymous email loaded with incriminating evidence, photographs of James and Lisa together, financial records showing the siphoned money, and communications detailing their plans to start anew. Ryan carefully selected the recipients: James's business associates, his wife, and members of Lisa's inner circle. By the time Lisa and James would return, their reputations would be irreparably damaged. Hours later, Harold called, his tone triumphant. "We've got them. Video, audio, everything you need." Ryan felt a grim satisfaction as Harold described the footage. Lisa and James sharing an intimate dinner, their whispered promises of a future together, their careless arrogance as they laughed about Ryan's supposed obliviousness. "She said you're predictable," Harold added, his voice tinged with anger on Ryan's behalf, "that you'd never suspect a thing." But Ryan clenched his fist, the anger bubbling beneath his calm exterior. "Perfect. Send me the files." When Lisa returned Sunday evening, her demeanor was as breezy as ever. She walked into the house, suitcase in hand, greeting Ryan with a cheerful, "Miss me?" Ryan looked up from his book, offering a faint smile. "Of course." She didn't notice the subtle shift in his tone or the faint edge in his expression. As Lisa moved to unpack, Ryan retrieved his laptop. The emails were scheduled to go out the next morning at 9 a.m. sharp. The night stretched on, the air in the house thick with unspoken truths. Lisa moved around as though nothing had changed, her confidence an unwelcome reminder of the depth of her deceit. In his study, Ryan stared at the evidence one last time. His heart ached, not with regret for his actions, but with the weight of what their lives had become. He had loved Lisa once, truly, deeply. But that love had withered, poisoned by her lies. As the clock struck midnight, Ryan sent the final confirmation to Harold and Emma. Tomorrow, Lisa and James's carefully constructed lies would crumble, and the life they had tried to steal from him would be theirs no longer. For now, he sat in the dark, waiting for dawn. The trap was set. The trap set. The trap would be banged. Step 1. The air in the house felt heavy as Ryan sat in his study, the silence amplified by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Everything was in motion now. He had planted the seeds of their undoing, and all that remained was to watch the results unfold. Yet, as satisfying as the prospect of their downfall was, a flicker of unease tugged at him. There were real lives, real people at the center of it. Lisa's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, breaking the stillness. She was upstairs, lightly preparing for the weekend with James. Ryan picked it up and glanced at the screen. It was a text from James. She opened the text. "Can't wait for tomorrow. Everything's ready." Ryan's lips curved into a grim smile. The confidence in James's words was almost laughable. James had no idea what awaited him. Ryan's first move came the next morning. He arrived at James's workplace just as the office doors opened, a USB drive in hand. It contained a carefully edited package of emails and bank records, evidence of James's unethical business dealings, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Ryan had spent hours crafting it, ensuring every detail was airtight. He asked to speak with the company's head of compliance, posing as an anonymous whistleblower. "I found this while doing some freelance forensic accounting," he explained, his tone measured. "It's disturbing enough that I felt compelled to bring it to your attention." The compliance officer thanked him, her face pale as she glanced at the data. Ryan knew the fallout would be swift. James's professional reputation would be obliterated by the end of the week. Lisa's downfall required a more personal touch. Ryan had carefully copied her private messages with James and forwarded them anonymously to the local community forum, a digital grapevine for gossip. Within hours, whispers of the affair had begun to circulate, subtle at first, then louder, growing like an unstoppable wave. Ryan wasn't done. He had also contacted several of Lisa's closest friends, posing as a concerned third party. "I thought you should know," he wrote, attaching an anonymous email with screenshots of her messages. "This is something you might want to discuss with her." By the time Lisa left for her weekend getaway with James, the foundation of her social life had already started to crumble. Friends who once adored her now questioned her loyalty, her integrity, her very character. That evening, Ryan made his final move for the day. He had enlisted Emma's help in reaching out to James's wife. Using the evidence they had gathered, Emma posed as a sympathetic stranger who had discovered the affair by accident. The evidence was undeniable, and James's wife was furious. "She deserves to know the truth," Emma had said earlier. Ryan had agreed, though he felt a pang of guilt for involving someone so tangential to his life. Still, the message was clear: no one would escape the consequences of their actions. She'd said she'd return the morning to comfort him. Ryan had taken it hard, borrowing it. Lisa returned home Sunday evening, her demeanor different. The glow she usually wore after spending time with James was absent, replaced by a nervous energy that Ryan hadn't seen before. She hesitated at the door, scanning his face as though searching for clues. "How was your trip?" Ryan asked, his tone deliberately neutral. "It was fine," she replied, her voice unusually quiet. Ryan nodded and returned to his laptop, pretending to be absorbed in work. He could see her shifting uncomfortably out of the corner of his eye. Something had shaken her, and he was determined to find out what. Monday brought the first major consequence. As Ryan sat in his study sipping coffee, the phone rang. It was Emma. "James has been fired," she said without preamble. "The company launched an internal investigation over the weekend. Apparently, he tried to spin the evidence as a mistake, but it didn't work." I shook my head. No way my coworker would say that his mistakes were a mistake. "And Frank will have been laid off." Ryan exhaled, satisfaction coursing through him. "Good. But there's more," Emma continued. "James's wife confronted him yesterday. She's filing for divorce, and she's taking everything." Ryan was silent for a moment, absorbing the news. He had expected fallout, but the speed at which it was happening surprised even him. That evening, Ryan sat across from Lisa at the dinner table. She picked at her food, her usual chatter replaced by tense silence. Finally, she spoke. "Ryan, have you noticed anything strange lately?" He looked up, feigning confusion. "Strange? How do you mean?" Lisa hesitated, her eyes darting around the room. "I don't know, just people acting differently." Ryan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Not that I've noticed." "Why?" She shook her head quickly. "No reason." But Ryan saw the fear in her eyes, the cracks forming in her confidence. It was only a matter of time before she realized what was happening. The next few days brought a cascade of events. James tried to reach out to Lisa, but his calls went unanswered. She was too busy dealing with the fallout from the community's judgment and the sudden coldness of her closest friends. Ryan, meanwhile, prepared his final move. Divorce papers. He had them drawn up and ready, the evidence of her infidelity attached as leverage to ensure she walked away with as little as possible. On Friday evening, he handed her the envelope as she sat on the couch, staring blankly at the television. She opened it, her face paling as she read the contents. "Blush. Ryan," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. What is this?" "It's over, Lisa," he said, his voice steady. "I deserve better than this." As he walked away, leaving her alone with the wreckage of her choices, Ryan felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, relief, and the faintest flicker of something else. The papers were signed, the house unnervingly quiet now. Ryan sat alone in the dim light of his study, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk beside him. The weight of the last week clung to him like a heavy coat, its seams frayed but holding fast. The storm he had unleashed was over, but the debris remained, scattered across his life. Lisa was gone. She'd left earlier in the day with a single suitcase, her departure devoid of the drama he might have expected. There were no tears, no grand declarations of regret, just a simple, "I understand," spoken in a voice hollow with defeat. It had struck Ryan more deeply than he anticipated. Now, as he looked around the home they had built together, Ryan felt the enormity of the emptiness. Every object seemed to hum with memories. The dining table where they'd shared countless meals, the living room where they had once laughed until their sides hurt, the stairs Lisa used to ascend with a bounce that seemed to say the world couldn't touch her. He closed his eyes, pressing his fingers against his temples. He had won. His plan had worked flawlessly, dismantling the lives of Lisa and James in ways they would never recover from. But victory tasted bitter. The end of their marriage hadn't brought the satisfaction he thought it would. It had brought only silence. Later that evening, Emma stopped by. She entered without knocking, as she always had, carrying a bag of takeout and an expression that straddled concern and relief. She set the food on the counter and gave Ryan a searching look. "You're too quiet," she said, folding her arms. "Are you okay?" Ryan shrugged, gesturing toward the couch. Define okay. Emma sighed and sat beside him, her presence steady and grounding. It's done, Ryan. You got what you wanted. Did I? He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. She's gone, James is ruined, and I'm here. Alone. Emma frowned. Would you have rather stayed in a marriage built on lies? Yes, she said, trailing off and staring into her perfectly clear coffee cup. No, Ryan admitted, but this doesn't feel the way I thought it would. Emma placed a hand on his shoulder. That's because revenge doesn't fill the hole betrayal leaves. It just stops the bleeding. The bleeding? The next morning, Ryan took a walk through the neighborhood, the crisp air biting at his skin. He passed James's house, its windows dark and unwelcoming. The once pristine lawn was overgrown, and the sight of it brought a pang of unexpected pity. Ryan crossed the street. James's downfall had been swift and unforgiving. His wife had left him, his career destroyed by the scandal Ryan had exposed. Even Lisa, Ryan had learned, had cut ties with him, retreating into her own isolation. Ryan stopped at the park, sitting on a bench where he and Lisa used to bring coffee and talk about their future. He realized now how long it had been since they'd done that. Years, maybe. They had stopped investing in each other, letting the threads of their relationship unravel until they were strangers. I should have seen it coming, he muttered to himself. But the truth was, he had seen it. He just hadn't wanted to believe it. In the end, days turned into weeks, and Ryan began to rebuild. He threw himself into work, finding solace in the structure and predictability of his projects. He started going to the gym again, rediscovering a part of himself he had neglected in the years he had spent focused on providing for a family that no longer existed. Emma remained a constant presence, her friendship a lifeline. One evening, she dragged him to a gallery opening downtown, insisting he needed to rejoin the living. It's just a couple of hours, she said, linking her arm through his. You might even enjoy yourself. To his surprise, Ryan did. The art was unremarkable, but the energy of the crowd reminded him of life's capacity to keep moving forward, even when it felt like it shouldn't. A woman at the gallery, a sculptor, he learned, caught his eye. They exchanged a few words, and for the first time in months, Ryan felt the faint flicker of something new. One afternoon, as he was cleaning out the garage, Ryan found a box of Lisa's belongings she had forgotten. Inside were photographs, letters, and mementos of their life together. He sat on the cold concrete floor, sifting through the contents, each item stirring a memory. A part of him wanted to burn the box, to rid himself of the remnants of their failed marriage. But as he held a photo of them from their honeymoon, he realized something important. Not everything about their life together had been a lie. There were good times, real moments of connection and love. Those moments mattered, even if they had been overshadowed by betrayal. Ryan decided to keep the box, not out of longing for Lisa, but as a reminder of the lessons their marriage had taught him, about trust, effort, and the cost of complacency. Months later, as spring bloomed around him, Ryan stood on his back porch, the sunlight warming his face. The scars of the past were still there, but they had faded, replaced by a quiet determination to build a better life. Lisa and James were shadows now, figures from a life he had left behind. Ryan was free, not only from their betrayal but from the bitterness that had threatened to consume him. He had survived, and in that survival, he found hope. It wasn't the ending he had imagined, but it was his, and that was enough.